It is exactly 17 minutes after 3 p.m. Central African time. While all political parties campaigned around job creation, the government of national unity hasn't shown the same amount of urgency. That's the view of Nape Senong, mobilizer strategist at Youth Capital. South Africa's unemployment rate is sitting at 32.1% in the third quarter of 2024. Now, that is a decline of 1.4% from the second quarter. Statistician General Rusenga Maluleke confirmed this earlier today. For more reaction, let's bring in Nape Senong from Youth Capital, a campaign advocating for policy change to address the jobs crisis. Nape, a very good afternoon to you and welcome to today. So looking at these numbers, there has been a slight decline, but is this good enough?
So much for having us on the show. Our reaction to these new numbers is that even though the numbers indicate a slight decline, we are very concerned around the rising number of people in need, young people in need, not in education, training, or employment, because from the research that's out there, we have seen that young people or people in general who have had a meaningful first-hand job experience or people who've had some sort of training are more likely to find work. And then I just also want to say that the increase is not that significant, which already highlights that there's a need for more systematic kind of responses to the crisis, because there's a very systemic crisis and it can't be solved by one, sort of problem. We need programs that are scaled up and are able to significantly touch a lot of people's lives.
The approach so far, how would you describe it? Because a lot of focus is on the creation of jobs. Is this perhaps the most expedient process or strategy to put in place, considering that more than a third of young people, they're not employed, they're not studying, they're not training, they're literally just sitting, waiting?
I think the approach to try to create more jobs is a positive approach, but I think for us to address some of the systemic challenges that lead us to be where we are, we sort of need, as I mentioned earlier on in my opening statement, we need more systemic responses. And from the work that we've been doing, we've been advocating for particularly three things. The first one is for government to prioritize public employment programs as a way to give young people meaningful their first job experience, because the research says that if one has a first job experience, they are more likely to find work in the future. The second thing that we think done is for government to prioritize the skills element, particularly prioritizing the skills fund that we find in the SETAs and NSFAS. At the moment, we know that the SETAs are a bit of a mess, and NSFAS has been experiencing its own challenges, including corruption, not having a leadership team at the moment, a fully capacity at the moment. So we think that those are some of the responses that we're going to be able to touch people on a systemic level and be able to touch a lot of lives. Lastly, we think that it will be helpful for government to prioritize providing an environment where young people are going to be able to be self-employed or able to run informal businesses that can later transition into more formal businesses, and they can also hire other people.
I wonder, Nape, if that third strategy, that last point that you brought up, if that is perhaps not a more expedient way to go, which is the creation of jobs, capacitating and positioning young people to be able to be self-employed instead of looking at government. I mean, is it a strategy that maybe might be first port of call for you as Youth Capital? Maybe just turn this entire pyramid the other way around?
I think there is no strategy that should come first, because the problem is so big. I think government should prioritize all of these strategies, because they also fall in different elements of government, in different ministries and in different portfolios of government. So we can do all of these and also at the same time couple that with us just having the proper monitoring and evaluation in place to be able to see what works and what doesn't work, what we can improve on and what we can replicate more.
As far as youth behavior is concerned, what are the youth doing? Are they migrating perhaps from the more rural areas to the more cosmopolitan areas for opportunities? What are their movements as far as trying to create some sort of employment for themselves and finding employment for themselves?
A lot of young people are trying to start their own businesses. They're trying to participate in the informal economy and be more like, self-employed because they think that, the system has forgotten them or big business has forgotten them or they are not able to find pathways to get into there. But also we do have young people that have actually just given up because it takes such a toll to try to find work, and following some of the spatial history that we have in South Africa. Yes, young people are trying to move more into urban areas or try to commute between urban areas and the places where they live in, but that is very expensive and it takes quite a big toll on young people. So I will say that there is some sort of agency that is being exercised on the side of young people, but at the same time, it is very hopeless for some young people because they are not able to.
Nape, Senong, we thank you very much for your insights today. Still very clearly a need for infrastructures that can absorb and capacitate young people so they too may have opportunities to improve their lives. That's Nape Senong, mobilizer strategist at Youth Capital. Now,